We're here with Thomas Hampson. Welcome. Thank you very much
Thank you.
to be here.
Thank you.
Where we talk about is about the international vocal competition in s-Hertogenbosch, where you were one of our most prominent prize winners. Do you remember that time?
I do. It seems a long time ago. But it was in fact the summer of my very first trip to Europe. And it started in Freiburg, Germany with my voice teacher, Horst Günther, and then a colleague and I went to s-Hertogenbosch for the week, and I had a rather dreadful cold. I remember that. I was very disappointed and very irritated because I was going to go on and do some auditions for jobs and so forth. And I stayed with the family, and I'm horrified that I cannot remember their names. We haven't kept in touch, which is my fault. But I don't remember, but I stayed, and I remember s-Hertogenbosch being unbelievably enchanting. I just thought it was one of the most wonderful places I'd ever been. It was a great week, a great experience.
Did you get any engagement from it in the Netherlands that time?
No, I went off to Germany. I'd had a contact with an agent called Wolfgang Stoll in Munich, and he had agreed already. When I came out of Los Angeles, I'm from Washington State, but I was in Los Angeles for 2 years. And I had sung a lot of competitions on the West Coast, and one of them was a contract to come to Germany, which I also did not win, but the agent who was the judge was Wolfgang Stoll, and he said, "Young man, if you can come to Germany, I'd be glad to represent you." So I went from s-Hertogenbosch straight away to Düsseldorf for an audition, and I was hired on the spot, which was quite exciting. But I still did a couple of other auditions and exhausted my Eurail pass and saw the Rhine and every other city I could go to, from Munich to Hamburg to everything else, for about 3 weeks, and got well. And it was a marvelous time. But I didn't come back to Amsterdam or to the Netherlands at all until I came back to Amsterdam and started a relationship with the Concertgebouw.
Yeah.
And that was some years afterwards.
The Mahler Festival?
I think I was here before then. I was here, the Mahler Festival was 95. I was here when they reopened the hall in 89, 90 with Bernard Haitink. And I'd been here some other time before. I mean, I've had a glorious and wonderful friendship with the Concertgebouw.
Yeah, and you did the carte blanche.
Very grateful. Yes, and the carte blanche was great fun.
So do you think that competitions are useful for singers still nowadays?
I do. I might have a bit of an unconventional attitude towards competitions. I must say, I went through, as a student and a young professional, I sang a lot of competitions, and successfully, and I gathered a traveling chest of, for money and study, important. But I think my unconventional wisdom says you can't lose a competition. I think you can only win from being in a competition. If you lose a competition, it does not have an effect on your career. And I think that's very important. More than, say, in fact, I would say if somebody doesn't feel 100% and they want to do the competition, go for it, fine. Yeah. But I've always counseled my younger colleagues to, if you're not going to sing as well as you are, don't do the audition. An audition is a canceled audition, as difficult and as problematic as that is in the business, is still easier to get back than the second audition because the first one didn't go well.
Yes, oh, that's true.
Competitions aren't like that. Competitions are, and I think some of the more traditional and bigger, important competitions like the s-Hertogenbosch, which is about a larger period of time. You get to know the students. You counsel them on their career. You counsel them on, or help them, give them advice as to how the business works and so forth. So it's a much larger ingratiating process, and they're sifting through the various levels. It's not about singing German well Monday and French well Wednesday and getting into the third round. There's a much more developed process, and I think that if you're going to have a competition, it must have those kinds of ingredients. Yeah. Just showing up for Saturday and who sings best and you get $500 or $5,000. Yeah, okay, those are perhaps also useful, but they're not really as important as an important competition like this. The industry has changed so fundamentally. I've never talked about competitions. I've never done an interview about any competition and I'm involved a lot in education and master classes in both sides of the Atlantic. because it is kind of a field unto itself, and that's why perhaps my views on it are somewhat unconventional. I'm more concerned about helping young people get their feet into an industry that has become, well, you know, very much more business-oriented than necessarily artistically oriented. That doesn't mean that artistic things are not happening, and we were just talking about the Netherlands Opera, and you could name any number of opera houses across the country where great and glorious things are happening. Yeah. But I think that the business, get the job, get the next job, move it along, both on the sides of the managements for singers as well as opera houses themselves, has become much more callous and much more short-term. Nobody really cares today, and I hate to say this, but I really must say it. I guess I can't say nobody. Very, very few people care whether a young singer, if they do this repertoire, is in danger of not doing some other repertoire 10 years later. The idea of a young 20-year-old something being sure that they're a 40-year-old something is simply not a priority today. And this is frightening. I think this is extremely worrying. 100 years ago, every intendant in the business read music. They had to. How else would they know what the heck they were talking about, you know? Most of them, they could play the piano. I mean, at least there was something. Now, most directors of opera companies are not even hired if they're musicians, because they need business people to make sure that that company runs well. This is not a criticism, it's just a fact of life. It's a mutation. So I do believe that the onus is perhaps upon the musical community and the artistic community to find ways to hook up both sides of that. On the other hand, there are probably more business people in the music community than there are music people in the business community. So we better keep talking. It would be very good, I think, for every intendant to be part of a jury of a competition. I just thought of that. Why not? That'd be a very good place for them to start.
You have your Thomas Hampson online singer studio. That's very interesting.
Yes, it's just, it is online. Hampsong, thomashampson.com, which is the more professional side of my website or my life, and hampsong.org, which is the foundation that I founded, which has had various activities, both in education and filming and so forth, but was really going to have a major expansion this year. It's very exciting, and producing it in my own tour of American music and American song and so forth. But the multimedia singer studio will also move forward. It's very incipient at the moment. I am now working very closely with Manhattan School of Music, and there's a wonderfully enlightened woman there who runs the distance learning program, Internet 2, and distance learning is a very, very big deal in America and Canada, and I think this is a very interesting frontier to be part of. It hasn't gotten quite as embedded in the Central European education system, but hopefully we'll move into that as well. So I think there are infinitely greater possibilities. My dream would be to have a regular podcast and even a regular webcast where I can talk with people. And actually, I'm looking at some new web video software right now that will make my online presence slightly more fun and bells and whistles, and I can actually develop that singer studio into some sort of, you know, Dear Abby, as we say in America. Dear Abby was a column that you would write into the paper with, you know, questions. So, you know, maybe something like that. I mean, you cannot replace good teaching with the internet. That's not going to happen. And distance learning. I've had some wonderful classes where people in real time in various cities are watching, and I'm working in one and working across the web in real time, and that's very exciting. But what I see the real possibility is either as a general information corner, sort of people that have repertoire questions or availability questions in terms of books, repertoire, songs, where can I find this? I'm not very good at career advice just because I believe that if you sing as well as you can, your career will have to take care of itself. I'm not a business person. I can't tell, go to this person or go to this coach. But it is interesting to advise people and help young colleagues have their aha moment. There's also some, I will do a series of QuickTime films on specific technical issues that I like to talk about, themes that I like to harp on, you know, resonance and that sort of thing, you know.
You're very into the words and the text, and nowadays is it sometimes that it's the voice or the...
You know, if I understand your question or your statement, if I go back and look and read letters of composers when they write, and not all of them very often, but a lot of them write about why they wrote songs and their relationship to poetry, whether we consider it was good poetry or not. I have yet to find a letter where a composer spoke of the timbre of one's voice. I'm looking for this timbre to sing my songs. You know, I mean, you can, whether that be Schubert or Gustav Mahler, I mean, I don't care who it is. They don't talk like that. Copland didn't talk like that. Inevitably, composers, even non-vocal composers, when they write about music, they're writing about the communication of psychology. They're writing about people's experiences in the now. I love that quote by Aaron Copland where he says, all a composer really can do is write music that somehow will convey in the future what it was like to be alive now. And I love that idea. And you read, you know, I mean, Mahler was so articulate about needing poetry of the first person. Brahms wanted poetry that was good for music because it wasn't as good a poetry, you know. Goethe hated his songs, his poetry being put to music because he considered it to be musical already, or it was music in and of itself. And those are interesting comments, but I like to go one or two layers beyond that. Then what is word, other than a physical manifestation of our thoughts? I think as global as we've gotten and as intelligent as we've gotten rather numb to the magic of language, because we have become so utilitarian in how we use language to somehow communicate with one another, because while I'm on this side of the globe and you're on that side of the globe and I'm going to this part of the globe and I've never been to that part of the globe, and you know, we can go around the world now. Any normal person can go around the world as if it was just sort of, well, I'm going to take a couple of weeks and go around the world. We never think a thing about it. And yet language stands as a complete metaphor for the very cultures that we are flying over and flying through and visiting. And I think the relationship to the word is not about some sort of silly idea that if you sing words clearly you have less vocalism involved than it is, for me, the reason why I sing is to recreate an emotional context that belongs to all of us as humanity. That to me seems to be what it is to be an artist. I'm not an entertainer. What I do is very entertaining at times, sometimes less entertaining. You know, but it is about this reforming of things that already have been formed. It's not me. I am the service of something. And I'd like to think of language as a metaphor of that process. And that metaphor in a dialogue, and that is to me where the musical element becomes so powerful, because the musical element in a lot of ways articulates the various layers of reality that the metaphor stands for. So the very rich dialogue of thought in physical manifestation of language with the echo of experience in music, harmony, harmonic rhythm, language, melody, this becomes a world of dialogue. When I talk about singing songs, there's three people singing at any one time. There's the left hand, right hand, and the voice. At least that. And then you could add the fourth component, which is the people listening. And then you could add the fifth component, which is the imagination collectively. You know, not to mention the 2,000 that various individual imaginations. I mean, it's an enormously rich world, this classical music world. It has a compelling need for permanence that I think we should love, respect, embrace, and not be challenged to make it more accessible. It is accessible in and of itself. One person's 10% access point is their 100% access point. And I think that there's more good news in that than quoting all these economic charts of, failing graphs of radio and falling CD sales and so forth. Those are manifestations of a buying public, and the same problem is in milk cartons, or automobiles. I'm not particularly impressed by that in terms of classical music ideas. So I appreciate your comment, and I pardon the lecture, but I think it is fascinating to me. And when I think of somebody singing, of course their voice is important. Of course these wonderful, glorious, natural voices, or even unnatural voices that need to be pounded into and built. The human voice is a glorious instrument. We have no lack of glorious voices today, any more than we did any other generation. Yeah. We do have a serious change in aesthetic values than for, say, even 30 or 40 years ago. And that's, again, not to be finger-wagging. That is a fact. So what does that mean? You say that some people go kicking and screaming into the 20th century because their concept of great bel canto, or that moment of singing, is embodied in that 19th century harmonic and melodic structure and so forth, and perhaps even the sensibilities of people. I can't deny that Traviata and Rigoletto are, two of my favorite operas, and I never tire of hearing them. But do we want to be without anything from Benjamin Britten or Janacek, as you mentioned before? Or, the list is endless. So polemic is not useful. Dialogue is useful. I don't wake up in the morning with ideas for songs. It must be a fascinatingly frustrating life to live. Can you imagine, the muse or your God whispering in your ear, "You are the one, you are gifted, you may make music that articulates the essence of humanity. But I have some bad news for you. You have to do it with dots and lines." Can you imagine? So yes, I feel sometimes like I'm a midwife. I feel like I need to understand that poor person with the lines and the dots. And I do cherish composers, and most of the great composers, whether they be contemporary or long gone, write about the essence of music being between the notes and in the lines. Why? This is the most interesting thing.